The chess game originates from ancient Atlantis. It was a game known and practiced by the people of the continent that is now submerged in the ocean that bears its name. Chess symbolizes or allegorizes the game of life, or better said, the chessboard of life. Esoterically speaking, in the light of the Gnosis, we are simple pieces governed by invisible or occult forces that we do not know. Some of those mechanical forces are evolutive and involutive. We do not have to forget the revolutionary forces that work from the superior dimensions of space, the intelligent principles that are occult beyond the phenomena, creating and creating again. The ineffable beings, the lords of the flame, the masters of the conscious circle of the solar humanity, sometimes govern the white pieces and other times the black ones. That is to say, they direct the flow of the innumerable centuries. Some of those beings, called devas, govern, for example, the elemental departments of nature, while others work in many other activities. In all of this, there are levels and levels, grades and grades, and every group or family, according to their particular ray, acts over the chessboard, which, as we said, symbolizes the universal life. It is obvious that if humanity had the consciousness awakened, it would be able to determine the circumstances over the chessboard, because logically it would not be governed by the mechanical laws, such as the law of cause and effect, the law of return, the law of recurrence, etc. The chessboard, symbolism, and the arcanum. What do the four sides of the chessboard represent? They represent the four elements of nature: fire, air, water, and earth, frequently mentioned in all treatises of alchemy. They also represent the four existential bodies of the being: physical, astral, mental, and causal bodies, created by the real or authentic man in the forge of the Cyclops, using the transmutation of the libido or sexual energy for this purpose. Multiplying side by side, the 8 squares by the 8 squares, we obtain the number 64. At the same time, adding this number Kabbalistically, 6 plus 4, we have the Arcanum 10 of the Tarot. Let us remember that the Tarot is the golden book, and that by itself it constitutes the pattern of measures of the cosmic laws. So the Arcanum 10 is the wheel of samsara, the tragic wheel whose 3,000 revolutions or cycles have already been studied by the revolutionary scientific Gnosticism. From the point of view of transcendental sexology, the wheel is the alchemic hieroglyphic that represents the necessary time needed for the boiling of the philosophical matter, and of course for the boiling itself. Over the chessboard of life, we have to annihilate the ego and to create the superior existential bodies of the being, making good use of the time in the hard work of the philosophical matters boiling. In this form, we will be able to get out of the samsara's valley. The ego, the I, the myself, makes us stay tied to the valley of sufferings, to the fatal wheel of births and deaths, receiving new bodies as a result of the karma. Now, if we observe carefully the 32 white squares and the 32 black squares, we can observe in them the evident manifestation of the opposite pairs of the Hermetic philosophy. That is to say, the light and the darkness, the day and the night, the permanent fight between the forces of good and evil, that we have to transcend, that we have to overcome. Those black and white opposites are the oriental yin and yang, the passive force and the active force. Adding the number 32, 3 plus 2, in a Kabbalistic form, we get the number 5, which, in the major arcana of the Egyptian tarot, represents the great law, the divine justice. This means that the court of the objective justice governs the two antagonistic forces, and that the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, is subjected to its judgments. The chess pieces. Let us analyze now each one of the pieces of the chess. But before, let us see this. In total, there are 16 pieces. The number 16 is the fragility, the tower fulminated by the ray of the cosmic justice. Among the Kabbalists, it is the Tower of Babel, the tower of the confusion of languages. As a matter of fact, many are the initiates who fall on the chessboard of life as the inverted star. Many are the fulminated towers. Every initiate that spills the Hermes cup falls. The 8 pawns will also be inverted stars until they awaken the consciousness and create the existential superior bodies of the being. The number 8 is the number of Job's tests. It is a number of pain and sufferings. On the chessboard, the humanoids cannot understand each other. They are the mechanical, unconscious, asleep humanity. In other words, they are the famous Tower of Babel. The king. What is the symbolism of the king? Why is there a black king and a white one? The king symbolizes the internal real being of each one of us. When the king receives checkmate in the game of chess, it means that the cycle of 108 existences for each essence that plays has ended, and that the intimus, or inner master, has absorbed the spiritual principles to let the essence involutionate in the infernal worlds, so it will be liberated from the eyes. When that essence reinitiates a new cycle, it will begin once again the game of life. That is obvious. The White King invites us to think of the Eternal Father, Jehovah, or Ayad Hev. The Black King indicates the opposite, the Antichrist, or tenebrous forces of the universe. The Black King also makes reference to the animal ego, and in general to all the potencies of darkness, to the involutive forces of nature and cosmos. The White King is immortal. He has to fight against his antithesis. He is the one that impulses, from inside and upwards, his essence in order to make her work on herself on the chessboard of life. The Queen. The Queen also has 2 aspects, the black and the white. In its positive aspect, she is the Divine Mother Kundalini with its 5 manifestations, already symbolized by the Hindus in the holy cow of 5 feet. She is Mary, or Ram-Io. She is the feminine aspect of God, God Mother, one part of our being but derived. The ungrateful son that forgets his mother fails in the chessboard of life, cannot annihilate the animal ego. In truth, the White Queen, or Kundalini, is the electromagnetic and solar fire that stays twisted in the form of a serpent, waiting for the instant to be awakened. Those who have studied the esoteric Nahuatl or Hindustani physiology emphasize the transcendental idea of a marvelous magnetic center located in the base of the vertebral spine, between the anus and the sexual organs. In the center of that chakra, there is a yoni, or womb, and in its center there is a phallus, where the serpent, that mysterious energy called Kundalini, is twisted. It is unquestionable that only through the Sahaja Maithuna, or sexual magic, can the serpent, the White Queen of the chess in its energetic aspect within ourselves, be awakened. In its negative or black aspect, she is the goddess Kali of the desires and passions. Even now, some tenebrous and degenerate sects of India offer human sacrifices to Kali. So the Black Queen is the infra-instinctive and brutal force of nature. It is the antithesis of Kundalini, is the tempting serpent of Eden, the sexual fire descending into the atomic infernals of man. There always existed and will exist a crude fight between the White Queen and the Black Queen, a fight for their sons and daughters, the humanity. The bishop. The bishop represents the sexual force of nature, established in Yesod, the ninth fundament, sex. The bishop is the sacred lance of the ancient mysteries. The lance, the phallus, the sex, plays a great role in many Oriental legends as marvelous instruments of salvation and liberation. Used wisely by the soul that yearns, it allows one to reduce to cosmic dust all the cave entities that in their sinful conjunction form the myself. The bishop, in this game, has a phallic character. It is the symbol of the sexual power. Let us observe that it always moves in an X shape, which reminds us precisely of the cross of St. Andrew. The extraordinary torture of Andrew made famous the cross in X, upon which his separated members were tied. Undoubtedly, and without any exaggeration, we have to say that the cross of St. Andrew, the symbolic X, that certainly is a Greek K, was, is, and will be one of the most valuable symbols of Christic esotericism. The annihilation of the ego in the laboratorium oratorium of the third logos is the profound meaning of the tortures suffered by Andrew in the terrible X. It is the indispensable death that could never be achieved with a vulgar fire. Obviously, in order to do this work, the help of an occult agent is necessary, a secret fire of sexual type that resembles more the water than a flame. This fire, or this ardent water, is the vital spark sent by the Logos to the inert matter. It is the divine fohat, trapped in everything. It is the igneous ray, the kundalini, the sacred serpent of the Anuak's wisdom, ascending through the spinal channel of the adept. It is clear that we are talking about the white bishop, the phallus used in a positive form to achieve the chastity through the alchemic transmutation. It is not difficult to understand that its antithesis, the black bishop, is the fornication, the sexual force used in incorrect eroticism, etc. The horse and audacity. The horse moves over the chessboard in an L shape, and this reminds us of the law, symbolized among the Mohammedans as a horse. The horse of the chess game invites us to think of the mythological centaur and the Sagittarius constellation. In reality, the intellectual animal is still something not completed, and that is the reason why terrible fights are originated within himself between his animal part and his human values. The intellectual animal is like the centaur that has to send the arrow of his longing, of his yearning of being, to the inner sun or real being in order to return to him. The arrow symbolizes the arrow's force, and the arc represents the three forces, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that the neophyte has to use in order to achieve the inner liberation. The horse allegorizes audacity, boldness, daring, and other virtues of the consciousness. However, there exists the necessity to eliminate the opposite of those virtues, allegorized by the black horse. In the bullfighting's esotericism, the horse symbolizes the physical body not yet tamed, and upon which the neophyte is mounted, disposed to prick with the lance the bellowing beast, the animal ego. The tower and self-observation. The tower alludes to the state of alert perception, that is to say, the observation that the aspirant has to do on himself. It is a piece of extraordinary value. Without the sense of psychological self-observation, the triumph would be impossible on the chessboard of life. Do not forget that all authentic self-psychology has three fundamental aspects: self-observation, self-exploration, and elimination. Of course, the tower is established over the cubic stone of Yesod, on the sex, because the work of the mystical death cannot be done completely without the help of the third logos, the creative energy. So, in a watchful state, as the watchman in wartime, the neophyte from his own tower, his brain, his head, learns to transform the impressions, avoiding the accustomed process of information made by the mind, that is to say, interposing the consciousness between the tower and the impressions that come from everywhere on the chessboard. Paul the Apostle said to his disciples, quote, "You are the temple of the living God," unquote, as God had said, quote, "I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people," unquote. The tower of that temple is the head of the planetary body. The Solomon temple has human form. Bethlehem comes from a Chaldean word that reminds us of the famous Tower of Bel, the Tower of Fire. In order for the golden child of alchemy to incarnate in us, it is necessary to have already made the Tower of Bel. When is it built? When we have developed the solar fire within ourselves. Then the tower is built. In that condition, the Son of the Son, the second Logos, the Christ, can penetrate in us in order to speak the golden verb of the first instant. In conclusion, over the chessboard of life, the initiates have to build their tower of fire if they yearn for the interior magnesium of alchemy, the intimate Christ, to be born in his own crib. The pawns. Finally, the pawns are the neophytes or apprentices, those who want to become adepts of the conscious circle of the solar humanity. They are those who have been informed about the esoteric path that goes to the final liberation, and who for that reason work on themselves, debating between the black and the white. When a white pawn is devoured because of a bad move, it means that one has been deceived by the ego, something that is very common over the chessboard of life. Inverential peace. Samael Aun Weor.